Welcome to the Science of Kindness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Culver, and I'm so grateful that you've joined us today. We share real stories and give you tips, tricks, and strategies to fit kindness into your life. Enjoy and know that you are a bright light in this world. Welcome back, friends, to the Science of Kindness. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Culver, and if you're returning after listening to the last 6 episodes, thank you for staying with me and for being here. I'm super grateful that you're here and listening and fully committed to the science of kindness and what we believe to be true, that it really is a choice. And if you're new here, let me say this, welcome. I'm super glad you found this space. No matter if you're returning or you're new, I'm so grateful that you're here with me learning the science of kindness, unpacking what kindness looks like in the real world. In the previous episodes, we talked about understanding kindness differently. In episode 3, I talked about shame and how my stepmom navigated some hardships, but she chose a different mindset. In episode 2, I talk about the difference between niceness and kindness. And in episode 4, I explained how kindness is a choice. And that's what we had to understand in the foundation is kindness looks different. It's not something that's fluffy. It's not something that's weak, but something that truly is grounded in science, brain research, leadership, and real human experience. And listen, I know you might be thinking, but I'm not a leader. I don't have this. I don't have that. Let me be clear. You don't need a title to lead. When you choose kindness and you operate in a kind mindset, the right people will follow. So this episode is all about after realization. And here's the honest truth. A lot of us were taught kindness when we were growing up in kindergarten. Stay with me. You might be thinking that's where I learned the foundational understanding of kindness is in kindergarten, right? Be nice, share your crayons, sit on the mat, crisscross applesauce, don't make waves, keep the peace. And that version of kindness is super important in those foundational years so that we have the social constructs. But that version of kindness is incomplete. If we don't update our understanding of kindness, then we stay in that same reactionary space. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. And unfortunately, for a lot of us, it's actually part of why we're exhausted. And you're thinking, that is me. I'm a little tired. I'm a little exhausted. That's okay. And you're not alone. 70% of Americans are living in a chronic state of stress. 7 in 10. That is really high. And so let me say this clearly. Kindergarten kindness taught us how to be polite, but it did not teach us how to be brave, right? It taught us don't hurt feelings, say sorry quickly, be agreeable, smile through discomfort. But it did not teach us how to handle the truth with care, how to set boundaries for ourselves, how to name harm, how to navigate shame, how to protect dignity, including our own. So many of us are burned out because they're not kind enough, or we're not kind enough in our respective spaces or to ourselves. But what reality is we're still practicing that child-sized version of kindness in adult-sized systems. We're trying to use kindergarten kindness to operate in stress and burnout in 2026, and it's not working. So we're confusing kindness with being liked. We're confusing kindness with compliance, and we confuse kindness with silence. And the body, it keeps score. It can't tell the difference if you're actually in fight or flight mode in your mind or in physical response. And so it's trying to respond in that fight or flight response because it does not know if you're safe or not. So here's something I want you to consider. Burnout is often the receipt for years of nice behavior without kind boundaries. I'll be vulnerable with you. I didn't realize that I had burnout until I started resenting people and resenting things that I loved and people that I wanted to be around and doing activities I really appreciated. I was having this conversation with someone recently, and they talked about how their boss had given them some additional work and said, hey, I want you to take on this project and you have this project. And so the employee, who was my friend, responded and said, which project takes priority? And I had my mouth on the floor because that's not every response I have ever given. I say, okay, and I figure out how I'm going to balance 2 or 3 jobs. And I had this conversation with a friend yesterday. It's like, when the hard times comes, I always doubled down. I always dug in deep and I figured it out, right? Where other people, that's not their response. And what I realized through kindness and through doing this work is that's a response to some things that I had learned as a child and through my upbringing, that we just do what we're asked by those that are leading us without question for compliance, right? Going back to that kindergarten kindness. So I share that with you because burnout shows up when we keep saying yes when our body is saying no. And when we absorb that emotional weight that isn't yours to carry. And if you're thinking, what do you mean by that? Maybe you walk into a room immediately and you start scanning to think, how does somebody else feel? What's their facial expressions like, right? Never thinking about how you feel in that moment, right? You start carrying that emotional weight and start navigating that in a lens of safety, trying to control the outcome. And the reality is control is not giving us any more kind experiences. It's causing more exhaustion and more stress. So when we try to control the situation, or we avoid conflict to protect others while abandoning ourselves, that's only heightening our stress and heightening our burnout. And I want you to hear me. Burnout isn't a character flaw. It's a signal. It's just like our emotions. If you were to take your index finger and walk over to your stove and put your finger on the burner, it would immediately let you know, one, the burner is hot, and two, you might get burned. And I think for a lot of us, our emotions have been something that we've suppressed. I know that I'm guilty of that. If you wonder what I mean in that regard, how many of us are familiar with the phrase, I brought you into this world, I'm going to take you out of this world, right? There's some profanity that might have been embedded within that from our parents, or you want something to cry about, I'm going to give you something to cry about. So in those moments that were opposite of the feeling of joy or happiness or that baseline of kindness, right? We feel uncomfortable and sometimes navigating our emotions. And so what we have to remember is our emotions are not threat responses. They are signposts. They are signals. And that is something that burnout is too. It's signaling that something has to change. And it's a signal that you've been practicing kindness that is no longer sustainable. That kindergarten kindness is not going to be what allows you to be successful. Here's why. Your brain is wired for safety first. Conflict feels unsafe. Discomfort feels unsafe. And really, when you don't feel like you have approval, you feel unsafe. As humans, as I've said several times before on previous episodes, we are wired to be seen, heard, valued, and respected. Those are foundational components of belonging. So if we don't feel those things, we begin to feel unsafe. And when we're in that space of unsafety, the brain learns, stay nice, stay agreeable, and avoid tension. And hear me, that works in kindergarten. It does. But in adult relationships and leading teams and leading students and working in systems and leading your family, avoidance does not create safety. Avoidance creates anxiety. So when you avoid those hard conversations, your cortisol stays elevated. Trust is broken, and you begin to have resentment build quietly. And so the nervous system stays on complete edge, not because you're doing something wrong, but because your brain knows something is unresolved, and that thing is staying in the back of your mind all day long. Kindness that avoids truth keeps the body in survival mode. So you're in that constant fight or flight. And this is where I want to be really, really clear. The kindness that we're talking about here is not soft. It's not passive. It's not conflict avoidant. It's not about being liked. It's not rainbows, butterflies, sunshines, and stickers. What I'm talking about, or what I'm defining as adult kindness, sounds like, I care enough about you to be honest. I'm going to set boundaries to prioritize my own mental health and sanity. I'm going to say this with care, but not cruelty. The boundary that I'm setting protects both of us. And I think back to some situations in which I worked in some really toxic spaces. And I wonder, had I applied some of this foundational adult kindness that I've been learning through the research and that I'm sharing with you, would that have changed my experiences? I don't know that to be true, but I think about my friend who was sharing vulnerably in our conversation about how they had set boundaries with their boss, identifying which project do you want me to prioritize, and the response they received, ironically, this is interesting, the boss did not understand what they were trying to accomplish, and so my friend had to communicate, we're setting boundaries here. I'm having boundaries in my work-life balance, and I think it's a generational difference, but it made me pause and respond because I'm just so used to that a custom response too, of just saying yes when I really want to say no. And again, I'm being vulnerable in the story with you because so many of us say yes when we want to say no, and that's that kindergarten kindness. And when we choose to operate in a different space of kindness and rewrite the understanding that kindness is not gold stars and smiley faces, the kindness that I'm talking about is courage, right? Being courage, being bold, being tenacious, if you will. And I've seen this type of kindness play out again and again and again in leadership. When we praise people for overworking, right? When we apply that kindergarten kindness in leadership and in communities or in schools or with teachers, we praise teachers for overworking. Leaders reward for endurance instead of sustainability. We weaponize failures against people who carry emotional weight until they absolutely collapse. And we prioritize this of loving nice people because nice people don't disrupt, but kind people do. They do. And there's an activity, and I want you to follow along. If you're in a space, you're not driving, but you're in a space that you're sitting still and listening, I want you to cross your arms the most natural way that you would cross your arms and hold that, right? Just hold how you're feeling your arms crossed. And then I want you to do it the reverse. Put the non-dominant hand on top. And hear me, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel these things. And the reason I want you to feel that is because that discomfort is where kindness lives. That's where kindness sits, because kind people ask the uncomfortable questions. They ask, is this healthy? Is this necessary? Is this honest? Is this sustainable? Right? And sometimes that honesty makes us feel uncomfortable. But discomfort is often the doorway to change. And here's where this gets really personal. Most of us are really good at kindergarten kindness with ourselves too. And I want you to hear me. Self-compassion lights up the most neural pathways in our brain. We are so quick to give grace, understanding, and compassion to other people, but we're hardest on ourselves. We say, just get through this week. Don't complain. Oh my gosh, other people have it worse. And I know that that's a way in which that we're reframing our mind. And some of us may think that's toxic positivity, but that's not kindness. That's dismissing the reality. Self-kindness says, I'm listening. I'm allowed to need rest. I'm allowed to reset and recharge. I'm allowed to want and need change. Self-kindness is not indulgent. It's honest. And honesty is what prevents burnout from becoming bitterness. So here's the definition that we're working with here. Kindness is the courageous act of protecting dignity, even when it's uncomfortable. Not avoiding harm, not keeping the peace, protecting dignity. Your dignity and the dignity of other people. That kindness is what helps heal. That is the kindness that lasts. That's the kindness that fosters belonging for everyone to feel seen, heard, valued, and respected. So I want to ask you this to set and think about for just a second. Where are you still practicing kindergarten kindness in adult situations? Are you avoiding hard conversations? Are you procrastinating on the email? Are you avoiding a phone call? Where are you being nice instead of being kind to yourself and to others? Right? And if you're looking for that definition, go back a couple episodes. I believe it's on episode 2 that you can check out the clear definition. But I want you to think about, are you people pleasing and saying yes when you want to say no? Where are you being nice instead of being kind to yourself and to others? What truth is asking to be spoken gently but clearly? Right? Maybe there's something you've got to be honest about. And it may have to be a gentle conversation, but honesty is what's going to heal the situation and help us all move forward. And when you answer these questions, you have to be mindful that all of this is doing what matters, but it's doing it with courage and care. The last couple episodes, we really helped understand kindness differently and to set that foundation. And now it's about living it differently, right? Not perfectly. I'm not talking about going to be the Grand Marshal of the Kindness Brigade in your hometown or your state. It's not performatively, but it's kindness honestly. Like sometimes that kindness is setting in the discomfort, right? It's setting in the moment of, this is the right thing to do. And I want to be clear that kindness is not toxic positivity. It's not flattering people. It's not doing the extreme. But what it is listening to people, standing up for what's right, operating with empathy. When I say empathy, I mean asking questions, assuming positive intent, seeking to understand. It's also celebrating other people's wins. It's being true to our intent, right? And sometimes it's the most uncomfortable thing that we can do. But the research has been suggesting that as humans, we have an average lifespan of 4,000 weeks. Let me say that again. As humans, we have a lifespan of about an average of 4,000 weeks. And when you put it in that perspective, so many of us would change our mindset from saying, one day I'm going to do this. One day I'm going to do this. One day I'm going to do that, right? And fill in the blank with this and that, with whatever it is that we're procrastinating. But when we choose kindness, we are intentional with our 4,000 weeks. Kindness is not always comfortable, But sometimes it's slowing down and noticing people. Sometimes it's being honest with yourself and other people. Sometimes it's listening instead of reacting. And I know this is not the kindness that we were taught in kindergarten, but I have to be clear that kindergarten kindness was foundational for our social constructs, but we have to upgrade our understanding to adult kindness now because it's required for real life. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that you continue to want to learn more about kindness and share this space with me. Make sure that you follow along, subscribe, check the box, all the things. Make sure you share this with individuals who might want to be a part of our conversation or who might find value in what we're discussing here. And as I always say, friend, if you can't find the light, be the light. And sometimes the light you're looking for is the one that you carry on the inside. Until next time, I'm always rooting for you, and I love you, and I'll see you in the next episode.
The Science of Kindness podcast is hosted by Dr. Chris Culver. Our executive producer is Jake Doberens. This podcast was created in conjunction with Theophany Media.